Want to know what your dog is thinking?
Have a challenging dog behavior you need help with?
The Dish on Dogs is your source for all your canine questions.
Improve your relationship with your dog and deepen your understanding of your furry friend. Right here on the Dish on Dogs. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another exciting, informative episode of the Dish on Dogs. I'm your host, Mike Gould, Mayor, Founder, CEO of Hounds Town USA, home to the happiest dogs on earth. As usual, I'm joined here by the lovely Jackie Bondanza, the president of I call it the brains of the company. She's here with us, and we also have a very special guest, our little friend, Rosie. So one of the things I want to talk about today, Jackie, with your permission, of course, everything is done with Jackie's permission, is to,
well,
not everything, but most things.
Full
Come on, I've learned my lesson in life. Get permission for everything. Don't. So anyway, I've learned that. So at least today, I'm starting out the day going that way. Anyway, one of the things that are most near and dear to my heart is Hounds Town Charities. Hounds Town Charities. And to me, it's very important. And one of our episodes the other day, or a couple of weeks ago, we talked about altruism and how we want to do things, for the good of the world and the good of things. So here's the real deal with this Hounds Town Charities. I'm old and I'm getting close to heaven's door. So I'm trying to play catch up. So
got a lot of catching up.
I got a lot of catching up to do. So that's where I'm coming from, right? So I love dogs. I have a passion for dogs. And I see a lot of need. I see the world, humans and dogs, and it's just a lot of dysfunction. And always it's the dogs that suffer. Really never humans suffer. Everything things we do has a profound effect on dogs. So my goal is, and Hounds Town Charities, so we're going to talk about Hounds Town Charities. And like I said, it's a differentiator from us. Most all corporations have some kind of charity. But what that really means is they write a check. They take 5% of their gross income or a percentage and they write a check to something. We don't do that. We specifically are kind of boots on the ground. We have to make something real happen, not just writing a check and put it on our website that we donate to some group. We don't do that. We are our own group. And we do a lot for dogs. And, we talk about Hounds Town business, and we say we don't discriminate against dogs, right? And most people just think of the pit bulls, the Rottweilers, that we do not discriminate against. They're welcome. But often what's misunderstood or isn't taken into consideration, we take blind dogs, deaf dogs, three-legged dogs. Now I can introduce Rosie. She's a two-legged dog. So we got her, and she lives a dog's life. There's no sadness, Rosie. She runs, right, Rose? She runs the group. We put her in a pack, in a little wheelchair, and she runs around, and she is the queen bee in a pack of dogs. So it's to me, it's not a sadness. And most people that do have what is termed disabilities, it's really not. It's actually an ability. So she has the ability. And as I said, I've had dogs with no eyeballs. Not that they were sight impaired. They had no eyeballs. And they navigated through a pack of dogs. So that is really my thing in life. That makes me excited when we can do that. Anyway, Jackie, talk about Rosie and what is this what's going on with her? Tell me about Rosie, Canito. We do go to jails. Voluntarily. Goodness. We go to jails voluntarily. Talk about this. I had too much.
Oh my goodness. Lots of coffee today. Okay, let's back it up a bit and talk about, the charity, Hounds Town Charities. It's a 501c3. It was founded in 2011 as kind of the philanthropic entity of Hounds Town, right? And like you said, we're not theoretical with what we do. So we offer very specific hands-on programs through all of our locations, all of our, soon to be 20 stores. And we encourage our franchisees to offer discounted boarding and daycare services to dogs in need in their communities. And we have a whole program that we teach at our training around this, how to offer this, what does it look like, how to vet dogs, how many spaces do you reserve for dogs in need. And so on the ground with our franchise locations, that's what the charity kind of looks like. And so over the years, we've done, a lot of different things, including adopting Rosie about 3 years ago through the charity. Although she lives with us and she's our personal dog, she's kind of our mascot because she just so ideally represents the fact that we do not discriminate against dogs for any reason. So when people see her running around in a wheelchair, in a group, it's just the perfect image of who we are at Hounds Town, and the fact that we really do want to offer every dog the opportunity to be a dog.
Right. That's a great way of putting it. So she's an ambassador, right? She's our ambassador because she was running around the Hollywood Hills in her wheelchair faster than any other dog in the group, in the pack. And this is how it came. And then she's an inspiration, right? So how can you see her with 2 legs? And she lives the perfect dog's life. She's learned how to navigate with her front paws. So that's an inspiration to me. How can I complain about, I didn't have bottled water in my hotel room because of COVID, and I see Rosie, and there's not, her spirit is unbelievable. And this is most dogs, but she just highlights that fact. When we allow dogs to be dogs, and that's what we allow her to do, we don't carry her. Well, she's carried around here because she has no legs. She couldn't jump here. So my point is, we and I think most people that I know and interact with, whether it's whatever physical disabilities you have, we don't hold people back or humans back. So we allow them to be their best. This is the best dog, right? She could, and she literally is the best dog in the sense of everything. Yes. All right. So she's our ambassador. So yes. So she's the
ambassador to Hounds Town Charities and really to Hounds Town in general. So, but let's talk about some of the programs we've offered over the years and kind of what does the charity look like now?
Yes.
At the location level. So talk a little bit about why you started the charity and some of the programs like the Fresh Air Fund. Discuss that and why and how the charity kind of started.
Right. So obviously philanthropic things are a good thing to do, right? It makes you feel better, right? So you're not always looking to make profits and, looking at margins. It's just simple. So I've been working with shelters for the last 50 years, specifically the Brookhaven shelter here on Long Island. That's our home shelter. So I've been working with them, and life evolves, right? Everything evolves. So when I started this, the tagline was, what the hell was the tagline? Something about humans.
Rehabilitating people through animals.
Right. So the tagline was rehabilitating people through animals. That was on all our shirts. So, but what it meant was exactly that we know what dogs contribute to us emotionally, right? We know that. There's no denying that in any aspect of life, that dogs specifically, like no other animal. So my point was always to be, there is always people suffering, homeless people. It doesn't have to be, a criteria of cops, firemen, nurses, anyone, any human suffering. You could be a homeless person in a box under a bridge. If a dog could bring something to your life. So what's the difference? So there are people incarcerated. So we had a prison program. So if you think about incarcerated program people, and think of that was our tagline. What was it? Handcuffs to healing. Very clever. This is all created by clever people. You got it? Handcuffs to healing a dog. So what does that mean when you think of the big picture? There's many humans incarcerated right now. Not because they're evil people, not that they're horrible people. They made decisions that got them incarcerated. Dogs, unfortunately, they didn't make the decisions. Humans made bad decisions, and the dogs ended up incarcerated. So the idea was to take these two groups of people, incarcerated people, animals, and bring them together.
In shelters, animals in shelters.
Animals in shelters. So we take the incarcerated dogs from the shelters. We go to the incarcerated people in the Yaphank Correctional Facility, and we bring it together. We respect the inmates, we respect the dogs, and understanding they're in the same precise boat. And then we were allowed, with the 6 dogs that we took, all got adopted.
Right. And the 6 dogs were from the Brookhaven Animal Shelter, which we've had a long-standing relationship with. We've offered boarding and training and rehabilitation to a lot of their dogs over the past, 10, 15 years. Right. So, the Handcuffs to Healing program was done in 2017. And it's not really something that we've been able to repeat, at the franchise level, although we've had a couple franchisees ask, because it is more advanced behavioral work than than our program calls for. We can't expect our franchisees to, engage in a program that complex. Right. But it was a very successful program. We got a lot of news coverage for it. And the best part was the comments that we got from both the inmates, about their experience in the program and how it made their lives just a little better and more fun while they were in there. And then also, at the end of the program, the 6 dogs were adopted and they're still in homes.
And the inmate, it was a transformational process because we stick to our core values. We respect people, respect dogs. So for them to get an opportunity to be driven in handcuffs to our program and then interact with dogs and it was the same method. But like Jackie said, it's a lot of moving parts. It's not something we could easily replicate because it was a lot of work to work with the shelter and so forth. But for the inmates, it's transformational. How do I know? I went to have an egg sandwich recently, and somebody said, "Hey, Mike," and I'm like, "And who was it?" One of the inmates, and it was touching, because he remembered everything that transpired, and it was just cool.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think that it was a great program. So that's just one of the examples of what the charity has done over the years. We started out back in 2011-12 with something that we call the Fresh Air Fund.
Yes.
And so from the town of Brookhaven, we would invite dogs to come to our corporate facility in Ronkonkoma and participate in daycare for the day. And the theory was to get them some fresh air, get them out of the shelter, give them an opportunity to socialize. And of course, that makes dogs more adoptable when they have that opportunity.
Right. And that, again, that's an example of a relatively simple program, right? We pick a day, we pick a playroom, we vet everybody. That's the other important thing, particularly for our franchisees to know. We just don't do things spontaneously or impulsively. We really got to know who we're working with because, very frankly, there are so many rescue groups in the country today, and they range from being fantastic to being almost immoral, abusers of animals, scam artists, taking dogs, selling dogs. So it's a very toxic world. Dog world is toxic to begin with. And there's no difference between charities and rescues. So we're very careful who we align ourselves with, right? Because so we know how to sift through. We know what to look for in a charity. Obviously, municipal shelters we kind of gravitate towards because they have standards that
they're regulated. By the town in some way. Not to say that all of them are up to necessarily everybody's standards, but it's easier for us to have a professional relationship.
Right. So we caution franchisees or anybody out there, whether you're fostering a dog, rescuing a dog, be very careful of the organizations you're getting involved with because there's a big spectrum of, as I said, and you don't want to find out. You don't want to associate with a group and then see them on, 60 Minutes next week that they were abusers of animals or whatever they were doing, selling dogs. It's toxic. So anyway, we keep it simple, right? Fresh Air Fund, dogs come out of the shelter drops them off, and they play all day. Then they go home. So they, like Jackie said, they have a good experience. Then they present themselves better for adoption, right? If you see a dog running around in a group of 10 or 15 dogs, you're going to be more inclined to adopt or foster that dog opposed to one that's barking behind a chain link fence at your local shelter. It's just that simple.
And that's a good segue into talking a little bit more about how our programs at our locations look. The Hounds Town Bergen location has really replicated the shelter and charity program the best out of all of our locations. And so before they opened in 2018, they formed a relationship with the Bergen County Animal Shelter. And they agreed with the shelter to always have 2 or 3 or 4, if they had the space, spots for dogs from the shelter. Now, the dogs are vetted. Of course, they need to be up to date on shots. They need to be spayed and neutered. They need to be social with other dogs and people. As long as dogs fit that criteria, since 2 weeks before they opened, they have had at least 2 to 5 plus dogs from the shelter in their facility. at any given time. And what they do is they charge the shelter a discounted rate. So it's a very reasonable rate. And the dogs stay for a couple weeks at a time until they get adopted. Now, obviously, the benefit to the dog is that they're out of the shelter. And throughout the day, they're getting grouped. So they're learning socialization skills. The best part about what has happened with this particular program is that every single dog that the Bergen store has hosted, and over the 3 years they've been in business, which has probably been close to 100, has gotten adopted. Right. And the shelter does a great job of making sure the dogs are adopted quickly so that we're not experiencing dogs sitting at the location for a year, because what that does is prevent other dogs from being able to come in. So they've formed this really great mutual relationship. Beyond it being great for the dogs, it's a great referral program. So it drives a lot of business to Bergen. And of course, it does something good for the dogs. And the last thing I'll say about that is about 4 or 5 of the dogs that have been in Bergen's care have turned into paying customers.
Right, that's
so
another.
Customers will come in and pick up their dog at the end of the day, and they'll look in the facility and they'll see their dog playing with, Rosie from the shelter, and they'll say to the staff, "Who's that?" And they'll say, "Rosie, she's up for adoption." And they've turned a couple of these dogs into like recurring customers.
Right, which is obviously a good per field benefit to it from a business standpoint.
Right.
But I think that, all the things you talked about. So when we talk about, we have a relationship with the community. That's the difference between what we do and our competitors. As I said, if you're a big corporate place, you write a check, but you don't have this intimate relationship with the local shelter. Right. And thereby, so what does that mean? That means beyond dogs, we are all experiencing there's hurricanes, there's floods, there's this. So if the shelter floods, and we didn't, that means we may be able to take a certain amount of their dogs,
right?
Percentage-wise, and vice versa. And when we have that relationship, it's just really cool to have it. It's a very personal thing, and our business is personal, and our charity is personal. Right. So just another way of segueing. What else you want to talk about? What other wonderful things do we do that we're so great?
Well, I mean, I think the Fresh Air Fund and the things like Handcuffs to Healing are two major things we do through the charity. But we do other things, small things, toy drives, fundraisers, more typical charity work. But we like to be hands-on with what we do. Right.
And the thing to do, real simple, to not complicate it, because it is the Handcuffs to Healing thing. Like, we got to transport those as a pain in the neck. It had a great benefit to it, and I don't regret it at all, and I wish we could do more of it. However, it's just simple as fostering a dog for a couple of weeks. Well, it's just so to give this particular dog, maybe he's overweight. There's any number of reasons, behavioral reasons, that as long as the dog interacts, just take him for a couple of weeks. When we have space, guess what? When we don't have space, we ask the shelter to come get them, and they pick them up.
Right, and that has happened. And I think for stores that are just opening, the first year or two, you're not going to have 80 dogs in your building every single day. And this is what Bergen did. For the first couple months, they had like 8 or 10 dogs from the shelter because they have 8,000 square feet, and they had the space to do it. And it really gave their staff a good experience in managing, 8 to 10 dogs and understanding them. So it can be a great, mutually beneficial relationship that will benefit, obviously, not only the dogs, but the shelter and you as a business owner.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is true. You can tell me. I would say a large percentage of the dogs that come to Hounds Town in general as customers are rescue dogs.
Oh, by far, for sure.
So 80%. Yeah. So
but I want to make it clear that we don't, judge people who purchase dogs either. There are good breeders out there, but absolutely. So we get a lot of, the town of Brookhaven is our home shelter. So we get a lot of dogs that come from the town of Brookhaven and the town of Islip and all the surrounding shelters. Right. So having a relationship with the shelter is beneficial too, because you're just kind of in the know about what's going on in your community.
Right. So for all the brainiacs out there and all the analytical people that want to formulate programs and do this, my advice, just keep it simple. Dogs are simple. We have facilities here that are very simple. So just, extend an offer, an invitation to bring one dog, a foster dog from the shelter for a couple of weeks.
Right.
One day, whatever. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it.
Right. And that's what our training focuses on is our whole business model is about not overcomplicating things. But our shelter program is very simple as well.
Right. Do you want to talk about any particular dogs that Rosie looks sad here. I don't want people to get the impression she's sad because she doesn't want to sit here with this nonsense. She wants to zooming Rosie.
She does have her own Instagram.
She has an Instagram page, Zooming Rosie. She's a star. She came from California. She's from Hollywood. She's from Hollywood. She first came from Bolivia. She got some kind of a horrible Armenia, horrible life. She's got an Armenian passport, by the way. So
she does. It's really funny.
We knew she flew in from Armenia.
There they give dogs passports.
Right. Yeah, so it's a very funny story. So the point of the matter is, if you're willing, and this is, there are obviously, she has medical issues and so forth. You wouldn't know it by her behavior, but obviously if she's got a broken spine, she has no, what do you call that?
Well, she's paralyzed.
She's paralyzed, right. So, but this could be the greatest, this is probably one of the best dogs I've ever had in my life. It comes with complications. We talked about this in one of the shows. It costs money. Guess what? You got a dog, you adopt it, but you'll get a much better, take a blind dog, a deaf dog, and you'll learn from the dog.
Right.
The dog will teach you all about life and all about your complaints. And the other thing that I'd like people to understand when you're looking for a dog, dogs create emotion from us, right? We feel, for whatever reason, we project our own feelings onto a dog. So I remember this story a while ago, and we love our dogs, and we do everything for our dogs. So I remember we had a customer in Port Jeff years ago. Her name was Amber, the dog, pit bull, of course, very long time ago, and she had to get her front leg amputated.
The dog.
The dog. The dog had to get her front. Who the hell do you think I'm talking about?
I don't know.
What other creature has a front leg?
All right. Well, okay. I flew over the front part.
Okay. So Amber, here it is, very quickly. Amber had to get her front leg amputated due to cancer or some goddamn thing. So the owner, wonderful man, great. One of my first customers, he calls me and he tells me, Mike, I got bad news. He's all upset. He's really emotional. He goes, Amber's got to get her front leg amputated next week or whatever the appointment was. He said, what should we start to do? What should we do at home? How should we prepare for this? And of course, I've dealt with this because dogs have different pain thresholds. It's a whole different animal, literally. So I says, let's just wait and see how the surgery goes, and then we'll take it from there. I'm going to say, and I try not to exaggerate, but somewhere about 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later, Amber was at doggy daycare. She was oblivious to she had to adapt, obviously. It took a very short period of time. There wasn't months of physical, just like this nutty dog. There's not months of physical therapy. There's none of those things. So when we look at an animal like that, our natural reaction is to feel sorry for it. But again, I have no sorrow for this dog because she lives the best life she can possibly have. So I think we take that into consideration. And I think we just project what is it like. I had a dog literally. So we had this little dog that used to come in and I'd put him in a group of other dogs, a little tiny dog her size. And I used to bet people. I said, in this play group is a blind dog. I'd like you to pick it out by just watching the behaviors of the dog. And the whole group was interacting like crazy. And when I identified the dog that was blind, people would say to me, well, she probably sees something, shadows or something.
Because she was acclimating so well.
She was acclimating so well to this pack, and she was actually kind of leading the pack.
Yeah.
And it would be hard to discern anything. Obviously, you could pick out a 3-legged dog, but the blind dog or the deaf dog.
Right.
In this case, and then their brain can't process. They're like, so she's seeing something. And I'm like, that's impossible because she has no eyeballs. So that's it. She was born without eyes. And
so she had to learn to adapt like just from early age.
Right, but she used her nose just like our dogs do. They navigate in pitch darkness. So so these are the amazing things. It's hard to wrap our arms around it. But I know we wanted to also talk about something else. What was it?
So a couple of the other dogs that we've rescued over the years, and including one that's still up for adoption, or 2 actually, Cappuccino. So he is a pit bull mix. He's probably 5 or 6 now. And about four years ago, we saw him on the news. He was abused. And so we ended up getting him. And our intention was not to keep him and just to offer him rehabilitation work. But we didn't want to send him we didn't want to send him to the shelter from the vet that took him in. So he lives with us in our facility, but he really deserves a home of his own. And he's a great dog, does well with certain other dogs.
For
certain, yeah. He plays really hard, so he's only tolerated by a certain dog.
Right.
And just over the years, we've adopted and helped care for other dogs, including Wilbur. He was from the town of Brookhaven, I think. We did a bucket list for him.
Yes.
Because he was
deaf.
Terminal. No, he wasn't deaf. He had terminal cancer, and we didn't want to keep him in the shelter.
Right.
So we brought him to Hounds Town. We brought him home, and we did this whole video of Wilbur's bucket list.
Right. And just on a side note, I remember the dog that was deaf, right? So he lived at a shelter for years.
Yes,
5
years.
or 6 years.
Yeah.
And nobody, and this isn't the fault of the shelter or anyone else, but for 5 or 6 years living there, he had behavioral problems. He'd become very aggressive around people. We took him into Hounds Town Charities. Within the first day or first couple of hours, we realized that the dog was completely deaf.
Yeah.
And once we understood that, and just think about that with your humans, they get hearing tests, they get eye tests, all of those things. Dogs don't. So there, if you want to understand or have an inspirational moment, go to how do they can look at these videos of that damn cappuccino?
Well, I think they'll be linked in the post for the podcast, but also on our Hounds Town USA YouTube page. There's also a Hounds Town Charity YouTube page.
Find Cappuccino, because here it is. Like Jackie said, he was on the 12 o'clock news. They wanted to amputate. He was so badly abused, horrible backstory. And they thought they were going to have to amputate his legs. Then watch his evolution from this horrible situation to he runs faster than any dog I've ever seen.
He does.
This is again, you don't have to believe me.
It just goes to show you how adaptable dogs are. It really, really does.
Yeah, and they're not caught up in their own head. They don't, as I said, they just get going. They do their thing by their instincts.
Right. Yeah, so check out the videos in the if you're watching this on Facebook, you'll see the links. If not, head over to YouTube. You can also visit our website, houndstowncharities.org. All of the videos are on there. All of our programs are on there. It's a great just resource if you need a little pick me up during the day. We've got some really great stories on there of dogs that have just
Cappuccino
been rehabilitated over the years. So let's wrap this up.
Okay, we got to wrap this up. So
catch us every Monday night at 8 o'clock on the Dish on Dogs podcast on Facebook. You can also catch us on our YouTube channel, the Dish on Dogs, or iTunes, Spotify, and all your other traditional podcast platforms.
Great.
We'll see everybody next week.
Bye-bye.